Alright, today we're doing a look back at PSVR games. In general, VR is pretty good. I'd say it adds a lot to games. It's not just adding sort of decent motion controls, it's um, the 3D and depth really add a lot. It really can make games feel new again, even like a rail shooter, which something seems very simple, seems a lot more interesting in VR. I do think VR will take off, but I think it's not quite ready yet. Probably 5-10 years down the line. Uh, I don't think it's going away. There are some problems though. The goggles fog a little easy. It's a bit sometimes hard to see farther away. Maybe that's just me. And there's a lot of recentering. The game's also sometimes kind of glitchy, and you can tell that developers aren't experienced in VR. Although I never really experienced for myself, I know that VR sickness is sort of a big thing for people. I did get like the occasion, like very rarely, 1 or 2 times, get like a sort of feeling of like stepping on conveyor belt blindfolded, but that would usually pass like in a real quick moment. But it's mostly fine. I think it's a problem that people will get more adjusted to VR over time. And so I've graded these, since we're doing a lot of games, we're doing it by the tenths and not thousandths. Um, and these scores seem a bit low, but because they're critical influence. But when it comes to pure enjoyment, there's probably there's a fair bit more to be had there because the VR adds a lot to things. So they're more enjoyable than the critical rating would suggest. And we're starting out with Blood and Truth. This is a really fun, good game. It's one of probably my favorite PSVR game I've played so far. The switching guns and reloading and shooting is all really fun. The dual wielding guns, it's really fun. The first half is not quite as good as the other one. I'd say when you get to the construction site level, it really picks up, becomes really good. It's great. There's a lot of fun action, climbing, car sections, and these sort of like slow-mo running sections where you're sort of keep moving forward. It's really good. Although I'd say the cutscenes are a bit too long, sort of because you can only all you're able to do is just sit there and literally press a button to twiddle your thumbs. Those buttons also spin the gun and the shooting sections, by the way. There were some bit too suddenly hard sections at the end, especially that final car chase. Overall, this is really good, fun. Giving it an 8.8. Next, we have Up Until Dawn, Rush of Blood. This is a fun, good horror sort of game. The atmosphere and lighting looks real good in VR. I think they could have done more of this game, more shooting while moving, sort of thing. They never had the enemies come from more than one direction. It's a pretty fun rail shooter. It's good with good horror theme. Giving it a 7.4. Next we have Arkham VR. It's great to see the atmosphere and the Arkham's Gotham up close in VR, and there's even a part you could see even like traffic on the streets. It looks really good. But other than that, it's a relatively mediocre puzzle game. I'd only really suggest buying this if you're a fan of the Arkham series. Giving it a 6.2. I actually have Star Trek Bridge Crew. It is in the Kelvin timeline. If that's going to throw you off, but at least it's not Discovery. There's like a TNG pack, but I think it was a bit expensive. Very detailed and intricate. Star Trek is nerdy, that's the way it should be. At the same time, it's hard to learn and get into. It requires a lot of concentration. It's not like a shooting game or whatever. It's more tactical. The missions are a bit limited though. There's only like 5 middle missions. a dynamically changing mission. So it's a bit light on content. This game's also very teamwork dependent. Uh, you can have a good team of a real good game and a bad team of a real bad game. The roles are good and fun, though. The teamwork and the controls can be a bit fiddly sometimes with the small buttons. Overall, I'm giving it a 7.8. Next, we have Spider-Man VR. It's a good for a free game. Well, it's a bit clunky and awkward sometimes. There is also another Spider-Man VR game that's really short and doesn't have web swinging. So make sure you get the right one. Should have the graphic and the title. The web swinging is really fun in VR, although I imagine it'll give some people motion sickles pretty easy. And the wedge together motion to form like a web wall can be kind of easily actionally done. Unless for web swinging, that's a bit of a problem. And the button presses to turn don't work very well for how fast the web swinging is. And also having to lift your head directly up, like a right to 90-degree angle to run up a wall is really annoying. The shooting web combat isn't very good. There's a short story mission, and now you get time travels and combat missions and collectibles. But overall, it's pretty decent fun. It gets pretty far into web swinging in VR. I give it a 7.3. Next, we have Astro Rescue Mission. I don't really usually play platformers. This game's also a bit whimsical for my taste. But it's pretty. But I wanted to check out third-person games and VR, and I heard this one's pretty good. I like this pretty well. It's a good, decent platformer with interesting concepts. I dislike whenever you have to use your head to touch something or use a touchpad. Those controls can be bad. You could also sometimes see making the argument that this game would be a good game without the VR. It did have we have Astro's Playroom now, which is a not VR game. But I'd say that's a fair bit. Yeah, there's a lot of good things with immersion depth and perception. Good level variety. Although there's some sort of concepts they did in levels that I wish they did more than once, like the Ghostlight level or the roller coaster level. Most bosses in the game were pretty mediocre. Minus the bird and the shark were pretty decent. The stakes are pretty good. The music's fairly good. Especially the cave music song. That's one's pretty good. Overall, I'm giving this an 8.0. Next, we have Iron Man VR. A lot of good moments of emulating Iron Man. Also, sometimes some bad moments. I see, if you had to put your hand up to or pulse downward, sometimes you end up doing that, and that's not very Iron Man-y. And moving forward can be a bit awkward because you're supposed to emulate him being horizontal, but you're vertical. The combat's pretty decent. Good use of gadgets. Although it probably should be a button switch. Get to gadgets. Because using the wrist is a bit awkward, like pointing downward. A lot of reused level maps. There's poor enemy variety as well. The story's simple, but generally good characterization of the characters, especially Iron Man. But simple story overall. It's a bit awkward and glitchy sometimes. Overall, it's a decent game. I'm giving it a 7.6. Next, we have Firewall 0 Hour. Good tactical shooter. Kind of wish there was more arcade shooter. There's an arcade shooter out there. Nothing too revolutionary about this game. except for the VR, but it does add for a bit. Being able to look where your gun is not pointing, or where you're moving, surprisingly adds a lot. There's good full movement. The full movement is good, but it's slow. It's probably to prevent sickness, but there really isn't a lot of time to get out of the way. Seeing down range seems to be a bit of a problem, especially affects this game, but it's not like it's unplayable. Good shooting, good fun. But the starting assault rifle is kind of bad, so probably don't use that. It's a good fun shooter, good game, giving it a 7.7. Thank you to anyone who likes, comments, or subscribes.